Okay, so we're looking at 0 and 1 exponents. And this one we're actually going to do pretty quickly, but this is the last required part of this Nearpod lesson. And so you'll do these problems on the next page, but then after that, the next two activities have to do with optional challenge problems that I encourage you to try, but you don't need to complete to get full credit on this activity. All right, so here, the first thing I'm going to look at is this example down at the bottom. If we have x to the 6th over x to the 6th, what happens here is everything cancels out. X divided by x is 1, so that's 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, and we're just left with 1. We also know from the quotient rule that you can subtract exponents. So here I have x to the 6 minus 6 power. 6 minus 6 is 0, so that would be x to the 0 power. So again, we have a situation here where we have the same problem, but we have two different solutions. And the reason why we have two solutions is because those solutions are the same. They're equivalent. And so we can try that with really any number. So I chose 53 here. If I take 53 to the 0 power, I get 1, as we see right here. So anything to the 0 power will always give you 1. Now, what's also true is if you have anything to the first power, the first power just represents itself. And so 53 to the first power, that's just 53. Anything to the first power is itself. And again, we can see that in our calculator here. It gives us 53. And lastly, another thing that's true is if you have 1 to any power, that will always stay 1, because what you'll have is 1 times itself 53 times, which would always be 1. It doesn't matter how many times you do 1 times itself. There are some tricky things like 0 to any exponent. If you have 0 to a positive exponent, it will equal 0. But if you have 0 to a negative exponent, it will not. So be aware of that. That's kind of a trickier one. You know, and there's lots of different ways you can look online, lots of different ways to see that these things are true. So for example, if I looked at x cubed, that would be x times x times x. X squared, that's just x times x. So I'm taking away a single x. So x to the first power, I would take away a single x again. And then x to the 0 power, we would take away that last x, which just leaves us with 1. And so it kind of divides down, divided by x, divided by x, divided by x. So there's lots of different reasons there, but just know that anytime you have a 0 exponent, it will always equal 1. Anytime you have a 1 exponent, that's always going to equal itself, like we see right here. And 1 to any exponent, that just has to do with 1 times itself is always 1. All right, so that's the last required problem. If you'd like to stay tuned for the challenge problems, they will be interesting. Anyways,